Hi folks, Tim Sundles here, and we just finished part 2 of our comprehensive 357 mag / a little bit of 38 special review. And we just got into the 4-inch barreled revolvers for outdoor use, duty use, and social use. I had promised you, my wife reminded me, when I was talking about these 3-inch fixed-sided Model 65s that used to be FBI issue, and their blued counterpart, the Model 13, was also FBI issue. I'm going back quite a ways, 30 years plus, I guess. I had promised to tell you a true bear story about one of these guns. Owning my own business, a lot of times I work on Saturdays and Sundays because the factory is empty and quiet. And if I want to get out in the factory and I want to be creative with load development and other types of experimentation, I just need it quiet. You know, if there's other people and they're playing the radio and they're asking me questions or anything, I'm not as creative because I'm a little bit on guard. And you need to have a clear mind when you're dealing with handheld explosives. And you're experimenting. And I do a lot of out-of-the-box stuff. Anyway, I was out in the factory. This is when we had our factory up in Montana. And I was just working, and I hear a knock at the door. And I'm like, who would be here on a Saturday? I open the door, and it's a Montana State Trooper. And I'm like, all right, what did I do wrong? And he goes, no, I just was hoping I'd catch somebody up here. He goes, just last week I had an experience I need to tell you about with this load. And, this is our most popular 357 Magnum load right here. He said, with a bear. And he said, I was fishing on the Clark Fork River. He said, and he had the gun. He showed me the gun. He goes, when I'm out fishing and stuff, he goes, I carry this little Model 65 in a little hip holster. And he goes, it's just my woods gun that I use just in case. And he said, I was fishing the Clark Fork River, and he said this real average sized black bear, he said it looked like it was a younger bear, which it probably was. He said, came out of the woods and was walking along the riverbank, and he said it was watching me. And he goes, you know how bears are? They'll act like they're not watching you, but they're watching you. So I knew he'd been around a few bears at that point. And he goes, this bear had obviously become human habituated. And he said it walked right up to me, waiting for me to either throw it a fish or waiting for me to throw it a sandwich out of my backpack or something. And he goes, and I don't like that behavior from bears. It's dangerous because they get aggressive. And they do get aggressive. If they're human habituated and they think they can talk you out of food, they don't know how to necessarily be polite about it. And if you don't produce the food, they can get really ugly. And they're just being a bear. They don't know they're being ugly, but to you, I guarantee you'll think they're being ugly. And they are. Anyway, he said, so I just kept walking down the riverbank fishing. He said, this bear kept following me. And he said it would act like uninterested at times, but he said it didn't leave the riverbank, stayed in the open, and it would eventually catch up to me as I'd walk down the river. He said, well, I wasn't gonna make the human habituation problem this bear had worse by giving it food. It wanted food. And he said, so I just kept walking away from it. He said, finally it got ugly with me and started swatting at my leg and showing its teeth and stuff. He said, so I knew what was coming next. Next I was gonna get bit. And he said, so I drew my Model 65 and at, probably 2 or 3 yards, he said, I put one in the bear. It kind of turned a little diagonal. He said, I hit it right in the shoulder. And he said, that hard cast bullet exited its hip back here. And he said, I saw it kick up gravel on the riverbank behind the bear. And he said, the bear just folded, done. Because that when you do that diagonal lengthwise thing, that bullet's making a long terminal path. It does damage the whole way. And it exited the bear's hip and blew gravel up in the air behind the bear. And so I said to the officer, I said, I'm really glad you shared that story with me. I said, how big of a bear are we talking? You said it wasn't all that big. And he goes, nah, 200 pounds, maybe a little over. And keep in mind, Kim has a cold. She just got back from Illinois and she went through airports and stuff, and that'll do it every time. You go through major airports, especially if you happen to go through an international one, which she went through Dallas, you'll get something from somebody around the world that's spreading a bug. Anyway, that's my story of the 3-inch Model 65. And it's a story worth telling. And I've mentioned already to you that for outdoor guns, for me, in 357, they start with a 3-inch barrel. I won't use the 2 and the 2.5 inchers. They start with 3. I like the extra velocity. I like the extra sight radius, especially, and I like a slightly reduced report. The longer the barrel gets, the less of the report that is developed at the muzzle. And 357s, if they're anything, especially full power 357s, they are hard on your hearing. And you know, if you're in the woods, you're probably not carrying earplugs. If you are, you may or may not have time to deploy your earplugs. So that's the one downside to the 357, is the very sharp, cracky report. Okay, back to the 4-inch barrels. K-frame. This is an old pinned barrel, recessed chambers gun, had it a long time. This one's been carried a lot. Nothing carries quite like a 4-inch K-frame gun, and unless you've been around a bunch of them and shot a bunch of them, it's just like they're an extension of your hand. And they're sort of like the 4-inch Python. They just feel really good in my hand. But because I'm sick and twisted and I like bling, like I said, this one's been carried. Here's a mint backup that hasn't been carried. Same thing, pinned barrel, recessed chambers, Model 19 nickel. And I will say this, for the nickel that they made from, that Smith & Wesson made from the 60s on up, you get early nickeled Smith & Wessons or Colts, and I'm talking early, like 100 years ago, and the nickel will start to flake and stuff. These modern, more modern nickel-plated guns from the 60s, 70s, maybe the early 80s, that nickel doesn't flake. They quit doing nickel stuff because stainless became popular, and you know, I guess they just didn't have a demand for nickel. But being part gypsy, I like shiny stuff. I just love the shiny nickel stuff. It's just bling city. Now you can do polished stainless in place of nickel. I just love nickel. I mean, anyway, again, it's a K-frame. If you shoot the full power stuff out of it, you're gonna shoot it out of time after a few hundred rounds. If you shoot just enough of the full power to zero the gun with it and then use it only for serious carry, no problem. Okay, of all the guns here, short of the little 1 7/8 inch scandium, aluminum, molybdenum, gold-plated carry guns that weigh 11 ounces, short of those, this may be the most useful 357 here. This is a mountain gun. They made them on L frames, not K frames. Can you see mountain gun on the side of the barrel? Mm-hmm. So being on the little bit larger L frame, it's got 7 holes in the cylinder. I like that. It's not that heavy because the L frame isn't that heavy. Never mind that the barrel is slendered down like the Model 27s and 28s. Does not have a full profile barrel, it's slender. If I'm gonna carry an outdoor 357, this is probably gonna be it. I like the 4-inch barrels with the longer sight radius, the greater velocity, the whole 9 yards. This is an outdoor 357. True outdoor gun. I can't say enough good about it. I have shot the living daylights out of this one. It's still in time, and all I shoot, I shoot everything out of it, but if I'm carrying it, I am shooting the full power outdoorsman ammo, usually this 19A, and that's just a barn burning mean load. And it has yet to shoot this thing out of time, and I don't know, I've got thousands of rounds of it probably. Very, very durable gun, these L-frame Smiths. Wonderful gun. And I don't have two of them. I wish I did. Okay, 5-inch barreled guns. Now we're going to start getting into more of a hunting. I mean, you can still carry it. It's just not as compact, not as lightweight. Now we're going to start getting into hunting purposes when we get above 4 inches. And don't take me wrong. With a 3 or 4 inch gun, I can still kill deer all I want. Could kill an elk too. With that 180 grain, that item 19A, I can sneak up on an elk. I can put that bullet through both lungs, and that elk's gonna run 100 yards, tip over dead. If they can't get oxygen to the brain, they pass out. Once they pass out, they continue to bleed to death. The brain starves, they die. So a lot can be done with 3 and 4 inch guns. I'm just saying, for hunting specifically, you get into the longer sight radius of the longer barrels, you get into the increased velocity for a little bit extended range, a little bit heavier gun. Some people can, this is an end frame, a Model 27. I mean, this is a super duper nice revolver. It's a Smith & Wesson flagship gun. This is an old one with the pin barrel and the recessed chambers. This is quite the gun. You'll get a lot of velocity with a gun like this, and with that longer sight radius, they're just really, really good for hunting. Here's the same gun with a 6-inch barrel, Model 27. This is a later model. It doesn't have the pinned barrel. I don't even think the chambers, yeah, the chambers aren't recessed either. But nonetheless, it's a flagship Model 27 6-inch barreled gun, longer sight radius yet than the 5-inch, and just so usable as a hunting gun. Now, I didn't include single action Rugers in here. I've got some. I didn't include them, and if I'm hunting, I'm just as happy with one of those, with the single action guns. The 357, and you know, I have to be practical about this. In most of America, there's not grizzly bears to deal with like we have here. And the 357 is very adequate for woods carry, for hunting. It's just a really adequate cartridge if you're using the full power ammo. Just no flies in the ointment at all. I will say that if you haven't Googled Phil Shoemaker and you don't know the story about the 800-900 pound attacking grizzly he killed with our 9mm outdoorsman ammo, if the 9mm outdoorsman ammo will do it, the 357 Magnum will do it better. It's much more powerful. And if you're not familiar with that story, it's worth reading. And the only reason Phil survived it was the bear attacked his fishing clients, not Phil. Had that bear attacked Phil and got him down, his little 9-shot 9mm with our outdoorsman load in it may or may not have worked so well. But since that big bear attacked Phil's clients, Phil could stand back, pick his shots, and like I said about taking lungs out, he was shooting that bear in the lungs. He couldn't shoot it in the head, which would have been preferable. He couldn't do it because it was chewing on his clients. He didn't want to shoot a client. I mean, that's just always a real bad advertisement for your business that you shot one of your clients. So Phil was shooting this thing to be safe in the lungs. He killed it. It bled to death. It passed out from lack of oxygen to the brain and laid there and bled to death. It's doable. If you're shooting a deep penetrating bullet, and you don't want a jacketed hollow point for this because they don't penetrate as deep, but if you're shooting a deep penetrating bullet and you want to kill something, make a hole through both lungs. It's not going to die right there on the spot, but it's going to die in fairly short order. It might live for a minute. It might live probably less than a minute, probably more like 20, 30 seconds. And it can run in that time, or it can attack you in that time and do serious damage to you. In that case, you need to start shooting at its head, especially once it knocks you down. Start looking for the brain, because that's an instant shutdown. Okay. Last but not least of the 6-inch guns is a vintage Colt Python. And Colt made these, I think, mostly for target shooting, which is why they used the choked barrel. And they only choked the barrel down 1/1000th of an inch, from 357 to 356. How can you not love a revolver this beautiful? I mean, how can you not just love that? Or the 4-inch version. And like I said, these are old vintage Pythons. I mean, what a deluxe, iconic, beautiful gun. They have the nicest actions. I mean, they're smooth. They're just, everything about them is really, really nice. This one has been shot enough to have a little bit of a timing issue, because it's been obviously shot with full power ammo. And, someday I'll retime it. I don't use it. I just put it up. These guns are too nice to use. I don't want to stick them in holsters and rub the bluing off, although they've seen a little bit of holster action. The vintage Pythons, I just kind of put them away at this point. If I get to feeling really nostalgic, I'll take them out, shoot some steel, clean them and put them away. They're probably the only guns I clean before I put away. I don't clean other stuff until the cylinder gets hard to rotate. And then I figure I better clean it. To conclude part 3, I'll just tell you that part 4 is going to be all about the 357 mag carbines in their various forms, various barrel lengths, and how useful they are. Various features. There's actually 3 Marlins here, but there's Marlins from different vintages, and I'll get into them. This is an old 1894 Marlin that I bought from my secretary's husband, and that's their cattle brand. He's in his mid-70s. He just has no use for it, and decided to sell it. And I paid a premium dollar for it because it's the old pre-safety. It's the good old common sense Marlin before attorneys started running manufacturing boardrooms. And so I'll get into the pros and cons of the different barrel lengths, this is an 1892. It's not an 1894 Marlin. This is a Taylor's and Company. Very, very useful gun. And they're not politically correct. They have no stupid safeties on them other than that safety right there, which is the half cock. We'll get into all of that. And that'll be in our part 4. And then for part 5, I do think I'll step outside and shoot some steel with these things. I gotta be a little careful with the carbines. They tend to actually puncture the AR-550 steel that our silhouettes or steel targets are made out of. So I might have to just shoot rocks with those. Because the extra velocity that you get from these, which is considerable with full power ammo. You can just count on getting an extra 400 feet a second above our advertised velocities for handguns with these carbines, and maybe 500 feet a second. And that extra velocity changes the entire nature of the cartridge, turns it into a 200-yard deer cartridge, and will ruin your AR-550 steel targets. So, having said that, we'll conclude part 3, and where we will pick up with part 4 on the carbines, and how useful they are, from hunting just to woods protection to literally an assault type rifle. I mean, they're very traditional. Lever actions have been around for 170, 180 years, but they work for modern applications like you can't believe. There's just a lot of good to say about them. Folks, we've concluded with part 3, and we just have work we have to get done today. It's a Saturday. We'll pick up with part 4, and may God bless.